It was merely another tranquil evening following a day at the office. After a long day, I returned home, enjoyed a swift dinner, and chose to relax by diving into some Netflix. It was one of those lengthy, draining days, and all I desired was to relax and allow the world to slip away for a bit. The soft illumination of the television enveloped the space as I sank into the couch, seeking to escape the turmoil of the day at the office. Anticipation hung in the air, yet I found myself unprepared for the unexpected when the phone suddenly rang. Initially, I didn't even consider responding to it. The figure remained a mystery. I was aware it might be a telemarketer or just another random call, and I really wasn't feeling up to it. I caught a glimpse of the screen, and the urge to dismiss it flickered through my thoughts, yet an insistent whisper urged me to reach for it. Perhaps it was mere curiosity, or perhaps I sought to infuse the moment with an element of surprise, steering it away from the realm of the expected. I gently glided my finger over the screen before bringing the phone to my ear. "Greetings?" A moment of quiet lingered before a steady, somewhat recognizable voice broke through. "Hello, I understand that you are employed by my husband. Would you be able to assist me with something?" I paused for a moment. The tone was strangely composed and confident, yet I could detect a subtle urgency beneath the surface. I recognized that voice. Tessa, the wife of my boss, was the one in question. I had never conversed with her prior to this moment, not beyond the confines of the office, at any rate. She possessed an intriguing quality, consistently courteous, never venturing into the realm of informal dialogue, yet exuding an aura of someone accustomed to achieving their desires. "Of course," I replied, making an effort to maintain a calm tone, despite feeling slightly unsettled. "What's happening?" "It's not a big deal," she said, "but I need you to come by and get me from my place. I feel the urge to escape for a bit. Would you be able to come and pick me up?" Silently, I wished to keep this from my husband. My heart raced with unexpected excitement. What on earth was happening? I gazed at the television for a moment, as if anticipating the scene to morph into something utterly absurd. I never anticipated this outcome. I found myself questioning whether I had truly understood her words. "Hold on, are you asking me to come by and get you from your home?" I inquired, my uncertainty about the situation lingering. "So, you intend to hide this from your husband?" Tessa's voice held a steady calmness, but an undercurrent of urgency lingered in her tone. "Absolutely. I really need to step away for a moment. I wish to keep it from him. Kindly refrain from asking too many questions." I was still trying to make sense of it all. This seemed like a scene straight from a film. A covert operation. It's the sort of event that befalls others, not someone like me, merely striving to navigate through the day. Yet, there was an intriguing quality to her request that captivated my attention. I was unaware of the reason. Perhaps it was the manner in which she expressed it. A delicate urgency intertwined with a soft, unspoken request. I found myself uncertain about the reasons behind my decision to assist her, yet I went ahead and did it anyway. "All right," I finally declared, rising to my feet and making my way to my bedroom to fetch my jacket. "I will stop by. Where shall we rendezvous?" She provided the address, and I could sense my heart racing within my chest. I was completely unaware of what was coming, yet I found myself already immersed in the experience. I ended the call, swiftly put on my clothes, and snatched my keys. The atmosphere thickened around me as I made my way to her home, as though I were violating an unvoiced boundary, stepping over an invisible line I had never realized was there. Thoughts swirled in my head, each one demanding attention. What could have prompted her to reach out to me? What was her desire, and what lay behind the veil of secrecy? I found a spot a few blocks down, just as she requested, aiming to keep things subtle. I lingered in the car for several moments, attempting to calm my racing thoughts, my fingers tightly clutching the steering wheel. Then I noticed her approaching me. Tessa appeared exactly as she always did in the office, fashionable, self-assured, and composed. Yet this evening, she exuded an unmistakable change. Her expression had changed. A tension lingered in her posture, a tightness etched on her face that had escaped my notice until now. She slipped into the car in silence, and I promptly turned the key, easing away from the curb. For a brief interlude, we found ourselves enveloped in silence. I hesitated to pose too many inquiries, at least for the moment. It seemed as though she was reluctant to provide any explanations, perhaps because she was unsure of how to articulate them. As I started, a sense of uncertainty washed over me, leaving me to ponder how to shatter the stillness. What transpired? Is all well? Tessa released a long, weary breath, and I noticed her shoulders ease slightly. She glanced in my direction, her expression easing just a bit. It's merely another disagreement, she remarked softly. We've experienced this countless times before. But tonight, I simply can't carry on any longer. I'm finished. I found myself at a loss for words. It's hard to fathom the experience of being in her shoes, tied to someone of such influence and stature within the organization, while grappling with a profound sense of void. She had no desire for pity, however. She was not seeking assistance. She was simply articulating the truth, a revelation I believed no one else had ever encountered before. What comes next? I inquired, my gaze fixed on the path ahead. Where would you like to venture? She paused briefly, her eyes wandering to the window, as if seeking something, anything, to bring clarity to the chaos around her. I don't know, she said at last. I simply must escape. How about we take a little drive and explore the surroundings? I simply require some distance. And thus, we embarked on our journey. We didn't venture far. Yet it provided her with a breath of fresh air, a momentary escape from the thoughts of her marriage, her husband, or any other concerns for a time. It sparked a curiosity within me about the essence of true freedom, what it might feel like to abandon all that is familiar and venture boldly into the uncharted. The journey in the car unfolded in silence, punctuated only by the rare remark or sigh from Tessa. I chose not to seek further details from her. She appeared at ease, allowing the stillness between us to convey all that needed to be said. As the night wore on, my mind was consumed with thoughts of all that had transpired. What led me to this point? How did I find myself in this bizarre, dreamlike scenario? I found myself without answers, as if I were entering a realm much larger than my own existence. Yet, the point of no return had been reached. Time slipped away as we meandered through the city streets. The streets lay nearly empty at this hour, with the neon lights spilling a soft glow over the pavement. Occasionally, Tessa would steal a glance out the window, her gaze far away, as if she were adrift in contemplation. It felt peculiar. She typically exuded an air of elegance, always impeccably attired and flawlessly arranged. Yet this evening, there was an authenticity about her, a vulnerability that I had never witnessed prior. I was uncertain about how to tackle the situation. A part of me felt compelled to inquire further, to uncover the details of what had unraveled in her marriage. Was it truly just another disagreement, or was there something deeper at play? Yet, I understood it was wiser not to push further. Her focus was not on discussing her husband. She had come to find refuge. Eventually, she shattered the stillness. You're not obligated to remain by my side, just so you know. She spoke softly, her tone tinged with uncertainty. I never intended to involve you in this. I cast a fleeting look her way, uncertain of what to say next. She held a position of influence, the boss's wife, a commanding presence within the company, perpetually in charge. In that quiet hour, she found herself next to me, seeking assistance. It felt peculiar. I never envisioned finding myself in this situation. No, it's fine, I said, attempting to keep my tone light. I simply want to ensure that you're doing well. She offered a subtle smile, yet it failed to illuminate her eyes. It lacked any sense of joy, merely a subdued recognition of the moment. We pressed on, the city lights swirling around us, while I struggled to comprehend all that had transpired. This was far more than a mere favor. It seemed to be something deeper, an elusive essence that I struggled to define. I remarked, making an effort to maintain the flow of our discussion. What are your next steps? Tessa let out a shaky breath as she responded. I'm unsure. I simply cannot continue to exist in this matter. My feelings for him have faded. I've been attempting to persuade myself that all is well, yet it truly isn't. I simply cannot. Her words struck me with an intensity one hadn't anticipated. I was aware of her marriage, naturally, but I never really pondered her personal life. She always appeared so composed, the ideal wife, the ideal partner, yet hearing her express it in such a straightforward, unembellished way made me understand the depth of her silent struggle. We journeyed for what seemed like an eternity. The quietude enveloping us had become almost soothing by now. There was no hurry. She appeared indifferent to any specific destination. It was merely a matter of creating space between her and the existence she could no longer endure. I don't know what I'm doing, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, as if confiding in her own thoughts. I feel completely adrift. I was at a loss for words in response to that. What can I express? I was not her therapist. I found myself uncertain about the reasons behind her revelations, yet I chose to remain silent. I refrained from providing any suggestions. I allowed her to speak, allowing her words to occupy the silence that lingered between us. At last, she faced me, our gazes locking in an unspoken connection. Her gaze held a new depth now. The earlier tension had eased, giving way to a different feeling. A fragility, perhaps a longing for affirmation. Could you guide me to a different place? A tranquil place. She inquired, I just need some time to reflect. I nodded, uncertain of the path ahead, yet aware that she simply required a moment of tranquility. I wasn't seeking specifics. I refrained from pushing her for any additional details. I just took a drive. I was unsure of the location she required. A tranquil park, a hidden nook by the water, any place where she could simply exhale and find peace. Silence enveloped us as we drove, yet an unspoken connection blossomed in the air. A connection that goes beyond words, perhaps. Eventually, I discovered a serene location beside a lake at the edge of town. The full moon bathed the water in a shimmering silver light. The atmosphere was serene. An ideal setting for her to reflect and contemplate. I came to a stop and set the car in park. We remained still for a few moments. The resonance of her words lingered in the atmosphere, leaving me uncertain about what would unfold next. Did she anticipate that I would provide solace? To assure her that everything would turn out fine? I was unsure of how to approach that task. I appreciate this, she murmured, shattering the stillness. I realize that reaching out to you may not have been the best decision. I can't quite understand my reasoning behind it. I shrugged, attempting to maintain a carefree atmosphere. It's absolutely fine. She offered a subtle smile, yet this time, it carried a different weight. It carried a deeper sense of sorrow, a feeling of acceptance. She gazed at the water, where the moon's reflection danced upon the surface. She suddenly expressed her thoughts about possibly leaving him. For some time now. However, I'm unsure of the way forward. I feel a sense of fear. I'm uncertain about my ability to accomplish this. I found myself at a loss for words in response to that. I lacked the response she sought. I found myself uncertain about how to resolve the situation. I found myself questioning whether a solution truly existed. Yet, I sensed that she was yearning for a listening ear. A person who would accept her without judgment or impose their will upon her. We lingered in quietude for a moment. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of the trees and the soft lapping of the water against the shore. It was serene, yet an oppressive heaviness lingered in the atmosphere. A silent acknowledgement that nothing would return to its former state. I was uncertain about the direction of this journey, yet I felt deep down that tonight marked the start of something significant. It was an unexpected turn of events, yet I found myself unable to resist. At last, she uttered another word, her tone gentle, yet distinct. Could you please take me to my mother's house? I really need to have a conversation with her. I must find a solution to this. I nodded, igniting the engine and drifting away from the tranquil lake. The night had slipped into the early hours, and I could sense the heaviness of time pressing down on me. Fatigue weighed heavily on me, yet an undeniable sense lingered that this was far from finished. There was definitely more to this tale. There was something deeper to whatever had just begun between us. We traveled in quiet once more, and before long, I arrived at her mother's home. Tessa remained silent as she stepped out of the car. She offered me a subtle nod of gratitude, yet just before she shut the door, she glanced back, our eyes locking for a brief moment. "Thank you," she murmured gently, and before I had a chance to reply, she pressed her lips to my cheek. It happened swiftly, caught me off guard, and was entirely unforeseen, yet it rendered me speechless. I found myself at a loss for words. I found myself at a loss for thoughts. As she shut the door behind her, I stood there, observing her retreat into the house, a swirl of confusion enveloping me. I lingered in that moment, grappling with the chaos, yet clarity eluded me. I simply couldn't. As I drove home, I couldn't help but shake my head, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance. What on earth just occurred? The dawn arrived all too soon, the alarm ringing harshly in my ear, yanking me from the fog of a fitful sleep. I barely managed to catch any sleep. Thoughts swirled in my head, cycling through every detail from the previous night. The way Tessa gazed at me when she requested a ride, the gentle fragility in her tone, and that kiss lingered in my mind. That infuriating kiss. It wasn't particularly remarkable, yet it caught me off guard. A seemingly small act, yet it plunged me into a sea of doubt. What was the significance of it? Did it hold any significance whatsoever? And what makes me the one? I attempted to clear my thoughts as I showered and dressed, following the familiar routine I engaged in each morning. The commute seemed to stretch on endlessly, and as I entered the office, it felt as though I had crossed into an entirely different realm. The familiar buzz of ringing phones and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards permeated the atmosphere, yet something felt amiss. Perhaps it was only my perception, yet an eerie stillness lingered in the atmosphere. Perhaps I was still feeling the lingering tension from the previous night. As I made my way to my desk, I caught sight of Tessa on the other side of the room, sharing a laugh with a colleague. Her smile radiated with a joyful, unburdened spirit. It would have been impossible to suspect that anything was amiss. She appeared entirely unremarkable, just as she consistently did upon entering the office. The same assured woman who navigated her husband's business with elegance and composure. The woman who, merely hours earlier, had been nestled in my car, pouring out her heart to me. I took a deep breath and settled into my chair, attempting to concentrate on the work laid out before me, yet my thoughts continually drifted back to her. How could she maintain such poise, behaving as if nothing had transpired between us? As if everything remained the same? The morning flew by, and as the clock struck noon, I caught myself eagerly counting down the minutes until lunch. I had no appetite. I felt completely energized. I simply required a bit of distance. I felt the urge to escape the confines of the office, even if only for a brief moment. That was the moment it all changed. Tessa approached my desk, her familiar smile intact, yet this time, there was an intriguing glimmer in her eyes, a suggestion of a hidden truth, something I felt unprepared to explore. "Hey," she whispered, her voice barely audible to anyone nearby. "May I have a moment of your time?" I rose to my feet, my stomach clenched in a tight knot. This conversation was anything but casual, especially considering all that transpired the night before. I trailed behind her to the break room, a cozy, secluded spot where the clamor of the office faded away. As the door clicked shut, she pivoted to meet my gaze. "I wanted to express my gratitude once more for last night," she said gently, her gaze locking with mine. "It may have come as a surprise, but in my moment of need, you were the one who stepped in." I nodded, feeling a sense of uncertainty about how to reply. I hesitated to speak, not wanting to cause her any discomfort, yet I found myself unable to hold back. "No need for gratitude, Tessa. I'm truly pleased to have been of assistance." Her gaze held on me for a moment longer than required. It held a certain intensity, a question lingering in her gaze, something elusive that I couldn't quite identify. You're a decent person, you realize that, she remarked, her tone unwavering yet laced with genuine feeling. I'm unaccustomed to encountering kindness, particularly from individuals such as yourself. I scowled. What are you implying about individuals like myself? Tessa paused, inhaling deeply before responding. I'm not sure, it's just that I've always found myself surrounded by individuals who seem to seek something from me. My husband's business partners, the individuals who extend their help to us, seem to be primarily focused on their own interests. However, you stand apart. I can perceive it. I was at a loss for words in response to that. Indeed, she was correct. I approached it without any specific intentions. I had no intentions of gaining anything from her. I had no intention of taking advantage of her in any way. Yet, when she expressed it that way, I felt exposed, as if I had just entered a part one wasn't ready to play. I was merely an employee of her husband. That was everything. I ran my fingers through my hair, attempting to dispel the growing sense of awkwardness that was beginning to take hold. Listen, Tessa, I only aim to assist. That concludes everything. She edged a bit nearer, her gaze probing into my own. I understand, and that's precisely what adds to the confusion. I gazed at her, attempting to unravel the meaning behind her words. Was she being playful with me? Or was this merely a step in her journey of discovery? I was completely unaware. The atmosphere surrounding us had undeniably changed. An unvoiced tension lingered, subtly tugging us toward diverging paths. I don't know what's happening, she said, her voice shattering the stillness. This all took me by surprise. I was surprised that you were the one I reached out to last night. Yet, I sought a companion who would offer understanding without judgment. And I believe I'm beginning to depend on you. My heart raced, and an overwhelming sensation made it feel as though I was gasping for air. This was perilous ground. I was aware of it, yet I found myself unable to resist being drawn in further. I don't know what you want from me, I said, my voice barely rising above a whisper. However, I am not. I may not fit the vision you have in mind. I'm simply someone who is employed here. Tessa smiled gently, yet her eyes held a trace of melancholy. I have no expectations from you, at least not in the manner you might assume. I parted my lips to speak, yet silence enveloped me. What can I possibly express in response to that? She extended her hand, brushing my arm gently. Let's simply move on from this. I apologize if I caused any discomfort. I simply felt the urge to converse. The door to the break room creaked open, and we instinctively moved away from each other. Tessa cleared her throat, her composed facade re-establishing itself as though the moment had never occurred. It felt as though we had just navigated one of the most intense and bewildering dialogues of my existence. I'll see you later, she said, her smile warm and courteous. I appreciate your attention. I observed her exit the room, my thoughts swirling in chaos. What on earth was happening? It was impossible to ignore the sense that everything had suddenly become much more intricate. The remainder of the workday passed in a haze. Tessa lingered in my mind, thoughts swirling around her presence. A sense of transformation lingered in the air, an unshakable awareness that something had shifted in our connection. As I attempted to concentrate on my responsibilities, I found that the effort only intensified the unease that had settled in after our chat in the break room. She claimed she didn't want anything from me, yet I found myself questioning the truth of her words. Her words carried an undercurrent, an unspoken tension that hung in the air. It was impossible to overlook. As evening approached, I had managed to persuade myself to set everything aside. I was compelled to. She had entered into matrimony. She was married to my superior. I had to keep my emotions in check. It was already quite intricate. As I gathered my belongings and got ready to exit the office, my phone vibrated. Tessa was the one. I gazed at the message for a brief moment, my heart racing with anticipation. I was taken aback by how quickly she reached out. I opened it, my hands quivering just a bit. Shall we reconvene this evening? At the same moment. Identical location. Uncertainty clouded my mind. This wasn't the first time she had invited me to meet her outside the office, yet there was something about this message that felt distinct. It felt as though she was yearning for something deeper. Uncertainty lingered within me, yet a profound realization urged me forward. I found it impossible to decline. I swiftly replied, "I'll be there." The journey to the destination seemed to stretch on endlessly compared to the previous night. Thoughts surged through my mind as I braced myself for the unknown that lay ahead. The image of Tessa's gaze in the break room lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. The manner in which she nearly revealed something she wasn't prepared to voice aloud. I positioned my car at a distance from the place where we had previously gathered, mirroring my actions from the night prior. There was an inexplicable quality to discretion that heightened the reality of the moment, infusing it with a deeper intensity. As she approached, her outline emerged from the glow of the streetlights, creating a striking image in the dim evening. She appeared exactly as she had the previous evening. Serene and collected, yet her expression remains enigmatic. As she settled into the car, I sensed the intensity of her stare upon me. I found myself at a loss for words. I found myself lost in uncertainty. "You arrived," she murmured, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Absolutely," I responded, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor, despite the turmoil brewing within me. She remained silent for a moment, gazing out the window, absorbed in her reflections. "Do you wish you had done things differently?" she inquired abruptly, her tone scarcely rising above a murmur. "What is there to regret?" I inquired, genuinely perplexed. "Last night," she responded, casting a fleeting glance in my direction. "What transpired between us? Is there any remorse about it?" I shook my head, a tightness coiling in my stomach. "I don't regret it, but I'm uncertain about what this is." "What is it that you seek from me?" Tessa offered a gentle smile. "I'm at a loss too, but I'm weary of putting on a facade that everything is okay. I'm exhausted from putting on a facade of happiness when I'm truly not feeling it. And I'm weary of solitude. My husband just doesn't get me. He has yet to do so." She hesitated, as though in quest of the perfect expression. "In my moment of uncertainty, you emerged as the unexpected support I needed. Despite the lack of logic, I find myself sensing a connection between us. There's something intangible, yet I can sense it deeply. Are you?" My heart raced, and my thoughts whirled in a chaotic dance. It was undeniable at this point. I had sensed it as well. There was an undeniable connection between us, a force that neither of us could overlook. Yet, I couldn't allow it to end like that. Not at this moment, not in this manner. "I'm at a loss, Tessa," I admitted, my voice strained. "This cannot go on any longer. This cannot continue. You are in a marital relationship, and I am employed by your spouse." She let out a soft sigh, her fingers weaving through her hair. "I understand. I understand that it's intricate. Yet, I find it impossible to resist the desire to see you once more. The intensity of my emotions is beyond my control." A lengthy silence lingered between us. The atmosphere was charged, heavy with an almost unbearable weight. Air escaped me, thoughts eluded me. All that I had understood, all that I believed to be true, was fading into the distance. "What is it that you seek from me, Tessa?" I inquired once more, my urgency growing with each word. "What would you like us to accomplish?" She gazed at me, her eyes probing into mine. "I'm uncertain. I lack all the solutions. Yet, I understand that remaining in this marriage is not an option for me. I wish for companionship. I no longer wish to maintain the facade. I refuse to continue deceiving myself." The anguish in her gaze was unmistakable. The unfiltered truth in her expressions. It was in that moment that I truly understood the depth of her struggle. "I also don't wish to continue with this." I spoke, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "However, I'm unsure about how to resolve this issue. I'm feeling uncertain about my next steps." Tessa extended her hand, gently placing it on mine. It was a modest act, yet it seemed to encapsulate the entirety of that moment. I just needed to hear you say that, she murmured gently. I simply wanted to ensure that you were on the same page. Uncertainty loomed over me, leaving me in suspense about what would unfold next. I was uncertain whether we could maintain this confidentiality together. It was baffling to think we could continue to act as if everything was fine, when the reality was so evidently different. However, there was one thing I was certain of. I found myself unable to turn my back on her,